idcwoodcraft.com. Hello, my CNC brother or sister. I'm Garrett with IDC Woodcraft, and I'd like to welcome you to this video. I get asked all the time, can a CNC router be run vertical or up and down? And the answer is an absolute yes, it can, as long as it's not belt drive. If you have a screw drive on your machine, such as a ball screw or a lead screw, like we have a lead screw on the Longmill here, then yes, you absolutely can run it vertical. Now, people have asked me about the Longmill specifically, can it be run horizontal or vertical? And the answer is yes. But I want to show you a little better technique that you may want to consider when it comes to the space saving with your CNC router and getting a little mobility out of it. Now, in the making of this video, I ran into an issue that you as a CNC router owner will run into at some point in your CNC router journey, and that is your machine quits right in the middle of a project. The power dropped just momentarily when I was carving the project that I'm going to be showing you. And I had carved away my X, Y, and Z 0 points. How do you recover from that? Well, most video creators about CNC routers don't teach you this. So this is a very important tip that you're going to want to keep in the back of your head for when this happens to you. So we're not just covering the tilt table, but we're also going to cover that tip of how to recover from that, find your X, Y, and Z 0 after the material is completely gone. And I'm going to show you a couple other tips and tricks that you're going to run into as well, that I'm going to show you how to get around that. So you just know what to do in some of these CNC things. Just important little tips. So let's get back into this tilt table and we'll move on with the video. I have mounted my Longmill on a tilt table, a table that's built by Rockler. Now, if you look at this box right here, and just take a look at the image there, right down at the bottom, you can see that is a tilt table. This tilt table is designed for wood, so you can turn the wood up and cart it all around, but we've got a little unique use for this Rockler tilt table, and that is mounting my Longmill on it, and then I can tilt the Longmill up like that and unlock the wheels and move it around as I want to move it, which is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that this thing can run with the machine sitting in a vertical position. Right now it's about 15 degrees off of vertical. And we're going to be running this book 3D model that I've gotten off the Vectric software, and wrote up this quote that is one of my favorite quotes, which is from Albert Einstein. You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. What that means to me, and why it's my favorite quote, is wherever we're at in our lives, what we have is a result of how we think. And if we have problems in our life, that is a result of how we think. And so we literally have to change the way we think if we want to change the results in our life. And that's why that's a favorite quote of mine. So I'm going to show you the back of this thing before we get it running and how I've got it rigged up here. First of all, where's my tape measure at? Where did I put it at? There it is. Okay. So this is the Longmill 30 by 30. Now there's a 30 by 48, which you can do the same thing on. I want to just let you know the size of this thing is 48 inches wide, deep by, what is it? So it's 58 inches wide. And if you look over here, just bring the camera down here for a minute. And you see I've got my controls right here for the control for the router itself. And then this is the laser control, and then my e-stop. A lot of people like to put their control down on the side or underneath, but I don't like to do that because it has the buttons right here that I can stop the router and restart it as I need right here rather than going into the computer over here. So we're going to swing this around because I'm going to show you how this thing works and how it's rigged up. So you can see we have a metal frame here on wheels, and the Rockler tilt table is rated at 180 pounds. Now I have done a couple of things to it. I guess before we do that, I just want to show you my construction in the back. You can see I've got 2x4s all the way around. I have the MDF table, and then I have a couple 2x4 ribs going through there, and then I've added 2 more ribs there so I can mount the machine to the table. This is a 180-pound load capacity that it's rated for. Then you have to take into account the safety factor of the load, so they've probably got it rated at 300 pounds where it will collapse on you. Now this whole assembly right here may be 80 pounds, so there's plenty of way to go before this thing starts to fall apart on us. What I've done on this thing with the Rockler table, you see I got this wobbly thing here. I've got it flipped over. This would normally be downward, and there would be a couple of clips here that you could set your plywood on or whatever sheeting you use. But I didn't need this part, but I just kept it on there. And the reason I put these ribs in here is so there's screw holes right here. And I'm just using regular all-purpose screws, number 8s, I believe, that's holding this thing in place, and it's working just fine. I want to show you how I've got things wired up. And one of the things before we get into that too is how you balance this thing out. When I first had this thing assembled, I had this table a little bit forward, and when I'd lean on it, it would start to tilt on me. So I actually moved it back on that frame so that it's, I mean, I've got to put some pretty significant weight on here to get it to start to tilt. So where I position this based on the 4-foot depth of the machine with the pivot point, if you look right here, this is the pivot point on the frame. And from the front of the machine to the pivot is 16 inches. So that means that from the back, it is going to be, what, 34 inches. So that's where we want to have that at. If you decide to do this, 16 inches from the front of the 4-foot table, and then you won't have that. If you lean on it, it'll like tilt down on you. So I want to show you how I got this wired up so that the top area is clean of wires. So bring the camera in here, or I'll do this. If you look at the control, my X, Y, and Z wires are actually running through the table, with the exception of this one right here that has to go to my Z axis. So just the X and Y are going through the table. And then we have the laser, which is being run through the table. Everything's down below the table except what has to be up on top, just because it's inefficient to run it down through there. I'm going to show you the back of it too. So let's bring this back up and come around behind it. Now the controller is right there, and you see the wires are coming down through there, and it's coming up here, and it's being routed to my Y axis motors on the Longmill. This is the power control for the power supply for the laser, and I've got a power supply here which I'm using zip ties to hold it down, and I'm using this power supply here which is actually plugged into the wall. And actually I do recommend this one because it has a 12-foot cord to it. I'll put a link down below in the description for this one. And also it's very easy to mount relative to some of these cheaper ones like that. Now it's still kind of messy here, but at least the wires are out of the way on the top. There's one other thing that I don't use that much, but it's this guy right here. And what this is a endoscope type of camera that would plug into my computer. And if I come around the other side, and on my router right here, this is the camera end. So I can mount this so it's looking right down at the router as it's doing its work and do video recording there. So that's pretty much how this thing's set up. This Rockler, I think, is about $130 if I remember right, and they'll ship it to you. Unfortunately, I don't have an affiliate link that would give me a little bit of credit for it, but I still put a link down below in the description for you. The nice thing about this whole thing is if you're not using the router, it can get parked out of the way. You can see how easy it rolls around, and it's got locking wheels on it at the bottom, so I can just kick it out, and now it's locked in place. So if you have some space constraints, then this is a way I'd recommend that you go. So what we're going to do is we are going to run this project which is very cool, and it has about a 2-hour run time. Ooh, I can't hurt my flag there. One of the things, when this thing runs with this table, you'll get a little bit of wobble out of it, but it's not wobble from the frame. It's wobble from the wheels, just a little bit of rolling on the wheels there. But it doesn't hurt the machine whatsoever, it still does its stuff. So I'm gonna run this book project, and we're gonna use 3 CNC router bits. And what I'm gonna do, this book project, I'm going to start it and rough it out using this bit here, which is called the Hog. It's a roughing bit that's designed to just get a lot of material out of the way really quick. And it's designed to save a ton of time. If you've been on the Facebook groups, then you'll see that many people like the Hog. It's a game-changing bit. You'll understand that in just a second. We're going to use that to rough out the 3D model, and then we're going to come in behind it with this bit, which is the fine detail 3D engraving bit. I'm not going to be using the ultra fine detail bit because that's going to run up my run time to about 3 hours. The fine detail engraving bit, which is what you're looking at right here, is if you want to get really exquisite detail out of your CNC projects, your 3D projects, that's the one you want to use. Both of them are available at IDC Woodcraft, and I'll put links down below for those, as well as the Hog bit, which I can barely keep those things in stock because they are such a game changer, and many people have used them. And then finally, we're going to wrap this thing up with my little quote that I like, the Albert Einstein quote. So we're going to get this puppy running, doing the roughing, and then we're going to move on to the detail, and we're going to tilt the table, and you're going to watch that thing run out, of course, in hyper speed. And then we'll get the engraving on it, and I'll have a cool little CNC router project. So let's rock this out. So the first part of this project is going to be the roughing with the Hog bit, and you can see it's got kind of a weird shape. And what it's going to do, it's going to just rough out the material at 4 different levels. Now the Hog bit is rated so that you can carve on a relatively hard piece of material. Like, we are using hard oak on this project, and I can run it at 80 inches per minute with an 80% step over. And because of the nature of the 3D carve, I'm not carving at 3/4 of an inch deep. I am carving at a 1/4 inch deep to leave clearance for the taper ball nose that's going to do the 3D part of this. So that's what we're going to start with. I am using G-Sender, which is the control software that I absolutely recommend. It is the most modern. You can see it's got a nice clean interface, and it's always being worked on. It's put out by Longmill. It'll work on any CNC router that has the Gerbil-based control software. What we're going to do is simply start the router and hit start job, and you can see how fast this is going to hog out this material with the hogging bit. Now I'm going to turn this thing on briefly so you can hear what the roughing bit sounds like. Now with the hog bit, you want to make sure you're set on about 3 on the Makita. If you order this bit, you'll get a card with it that has all the settings that you want. Oh, and by the way, speaking of settings for the Hog bit, when it comes to CNC router bits, I have released an app for your cell phone that has all the settings for all CNC router bits. If you go to your app store for Android or for Apple and search IDC Woodcraft, then you will find that app and download it, and it's got all the feeds and speeds. It's got the router bit specs and some other information, and I'm always working on it. There's a feedback button actually inside the app, so if there's something you're looking for in an app and you're looking at that app, the IDC Woodcraft CNC router bit app, and that information is not there, use the feedback button in the app. So on your cell phone, right? Go and get the app, and you'll have all the feeds and speeds right at your fingertips when you're working on your projects. Again, links for the apps are down below, as well as everything else that I'm talking about in this video. So yeah, go get the app. All right, let's get back to this. Let's turn this on. Now I've stopped the video because one thing you might have noticed as that was running was there was a lot more noise coming out of the hog bit when it was going one way relative to it going the other. So that has to do with bit deflection. So all router bits have what they call a little bit of deflection. In other words, it'll just flex just a little bit as it's working its way through the cut. So as it was making a conventional cut, it was actually deflecting inward a little bit and then deflecting a little bit outward again because of the gnarly cut edges on here and also by nature of the cut. Now that's okay. This router bit is going to make a little bit more noise than your standard router bits because of the nature of the bit that it is. So it's not something really to worry about as long as you follow the feeds and speeds that are provided with the hog. Let's get back into this carve. So now we've done the roughing on the book, and we did that in about 10 minutes with the hogging bit. Again, if you want to try this thing out, there's a link down below for that. Now we're going to do the 3D carving on this to make it look like a book, and we're going to use the fine detail bit, 3D carving bit, the taper ball nose from IDC Woodcraft. And again, like I said, it's not the ultra fine bit, but this is still going to do a fine job on this. Now we're a little ways into this video, and I just realized I haven't even shown you how this table's running when it's tilted yet, because I had some other issues going on. So during the 3D carve, I'm going to tilt the table for you so you can see how that works. Again, if you like this Rockler thing, then there will be a link down below. And if you like this video so far, then maybe you might consider hitting that little like button down below. And at the end of the video, I'd appreciate a comment. So we're going to get back into this. I'm going to tilt the table for you. Now, I have created a little bit of a problem for myself, and that is my lower left corner of the project is my 0 point. My X, Y, and Z 0 are set there, and I just carved it all away. How am I going to find that position again? Well, when it comes to the taper ball nose bit, it's not an issue, which I'll show you in just a second. But when it comes to carving out the letters, it will be, because I'm going to be carving away the top of the material where my 0 point was at, which is no longer there. So to set my taper ball nose 0, my X and Y are still set in the G-Center software, but now the Z is gone. However, this surface is still my 0 point. So all I'll do is I'll just take my touch plate and 0 off of here. The problem is when I go to carving in the letters, this surface is going to be gone. So now I have to solve that problem before I lose this surface. I need to know exactly this height. And here is what I've come up with, a little cheesy trick, but it's going to work. So if you run into this, you'll know how to solve it. I know how thick this piece of wood is. It's 1.17 inches thick. And so what I'm going to do since I won't be able to set my 60-degree V-bit to do that quote, is I have another piece here, and it says, I love my Longmill, which is this machine. This is what I recommend to people who are starting out in this. I've got a very detailed review video on this machine, and you'll be surprised how strong it is because I stand on the machine while it's carving, and I do a little boogie while I'm on it too. So anyway, that's why I love my Longmill. I'll put a link for that video down below if you're in the market for a CNC router and still haven't really decided what you want. So what I'm going to do is measure the thickness of this one, which is 1 point with calipers. By the way, you always want calipers if you're doing the CNC work. And this is the set I prefer. It's got a nice big screen on it, and I'll put a link for this down below as well. So I'm measuring this, and it measures 1.37, and all I have to do is measure the difference, which is what, 0.2. And so what I'll do is I'll take the 60-degree V-bit, zero it off of here, and then in the G-Sender software, I'll bring it down 0.2 and re-zero, and then I'll have that same height again. So that's how we've solved that problem. I hope that made sense. I'm going to re-explain this. This piece of material is 1.17 inches thick. This piece of material, I love my Longmill, is 1.37 inches thick, or a 0.2 thicker. So all I have to do is set the 60-degree V-bit off of this piece of material, and then subtract the point, or zero it out, and then subtract the 0.2, move it down in the G-Sender software by 0.2, and then re-zero out, and I will be at the original zero position. The one thing is the X and Y are already set when we roughed this out, so we never have to touch the X and Y again. So that lower left corner is always set. We're just going to mess with Z from here on out. But with the taper ball nose, I don't have to worry about it. I just use the Z plate here and check it, or set the zero with the Z plate, and we'll be ready to rock and roll on the 3D part, the favorite part of all. So let's go. Okay, so we're just going to swap this puppy out. One of the things I just want you to know about with the hog, when you're tightening these things up, you don't need to juice them down super tight. Just juice it down till it's tight and you feel like it really grabs the bit. The thing about the hog is it's good even if it starts to get dull, it's still going to cut. So the intention of this is to spare these bits that have nice clean edges on them so that you get a lot more life out of these things. So we're going to put the hog away, and we are going to put in our fine detail taper ball nose. When you insert these things, one thing I forgot, you always want to clean the sawdust out of your collets. Sawdust acts like a lubricant, and your bit will start to move while it's carving, and it'll ruin a project. So always, every time, clean it out. And we are in there up to about 1/4 inch to where the flutes start. And now in the G-Sender software, all we need to do is set our Z at the top of the part. So we're going to move it into position, and then we're going to zero it out on Z. And that's it. We are ready to rock and roll to do this very cool part of carving. My favorite part of doing CNC routing, which is the 3D projects. So let's let this thing rock out. And by the way, any of the IDC Woodcraft bits, I have a database for you that you can import into the Vectric software with all the IDC Woodcraft router bits, so you don't have to type things in manually. Of course, there will be links down below for that. That is free to you. All right, we're going to fire this up and rock it out. I have run into a little bit of a problem that other creators run into from time to time. I had a power drop, and that means that the machine stopped right in the middle of the carve. And the problem that I have is now I've lost my XY position, and part of that position is now gone. So how do we recover when we don't have material to recenter ourselves? So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. And bring the camera forward. So you can see here I've got some of this book already carved out, and it has carved away my corner position right here, the lower left corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball the center of the bit to this edge here, and I'll be able to pick up my Y. But my X is a bit of a problem because that area has all been carved away. That straight line that we have right here, there's no straight line here. So the way I'm going to recover from that is I am going to get the best measure I can, which fortunately I have other pieces of the same size material, and I'm going to find this line back here and center the bit along the back edge of the raw board back here. And then I'm going to use the console and actually type in a command to move it forward to that start position, and I'll re-zero there, and then I'll be recovered and I'll be able to restart this whole program to do this. So that's how we're going to solve this problem. Before I engrave the words on here, I need to sand some of this up just to clean it up. You can see there's a bit of burr in here. There was some right here. I cleaned it off already. Down here and on the sides, just all the way around. And the way I'm going to do it is by using these little sanding pads for Dremels. Now these things are super cheap. They're like 5 cents a piece, and you buy them in bulk off of Amazon. They have different grits, and the color denotes the different grits. And so here is an image of what it looks like on Amazon, where you get it from, and I will put a link down below in the description to get these things. You will love them. They're very disposable. They don't last that long, but they do a great job at sanding the project up to get the fine stuff cleaned up. So you can see this pad is already wearing down. They don't last long, but they're super cheap. Like I said, a couple pennies a piece when you get the whole batch. So we're going to change this one out to another green one, which is the finer grit, and we'll finish up the job. And we're going to finish the project up. We're going to carve the words, the Einstein quote in the book, with the extreme detail 30-degree engraving V-bit. Now that's this guy right here. You see it comes down to a really fine point, and it actually hurts when you touch it. That bit can do really super tight detail, as you can see right here in this doily. That Probably took about 2 hours to carve because it's so fine and so highly detailed. So we're going to carve out the letters with this bit. Let's go. So at this point, you have seen me troubleshoot a problem that you are going to run into when your machine stops right in the middle of a carve, and now you know how to prepare yourself for getting around that kind of problem. And you've also seen a very cool carve, right? This 3D model of a book, which is available in the Vectric software when you get it. It's the software that I recommend, and all the videos I train software on, that's the software that I use. So I suggest that that's the one you get. It's the one I like. There's a link down below in the description for it, and I'm going to ask you, if you decide to get it, to please use that link. And for everything else I've talked about, the router bits, the hog, that badass bit, the fine detail 3D carving bit, and the extreme detail engraving bit. Of course, don't forget to get the app, the CNC router bit app for your phone. And finally, you learned about the tilt table. This is really cool. That was my earmuffs that are hanging under the table. This is really cool because when you're all done, you can park this thing out of the way. So you can save your garage space. It's very easy to work it that way. The link for that table is down below as well. If this video is helpful for you, gave you some ideas, then please take a minute to hit the little thumbs up button down below. And I'd really like to have a comment. Comments tell me how I'm doing, some ideas that you might have, and they always help my videos rank up there. If you feel this video has helped you, then it's helped other people, or will help other people as well. And of course, subscribe. There's a ton of videos on this channel for you as a brand new beginner in the CNC router space that you will learn how to just work your way up the ladder. With that, I'm Garrett with IDC Woodcraft. Make sure you check out all the links down below, and I will talk to you in the next video. idcwoodcraft.com